Hello, sorry. Just saw the chat. I was muted. I have been talking for the past 2 minutes, but no matter. I will just say it again. Thank you as well, sort of pointing that out earlier rather than later. So here we go. Yes, today we're going to be engaging with this limited palette. This limited palette being Alizarin Crimson Viridian and Titanium White. We're using today just the sort of paint that I have kicking about, which is an old tube of Jackson's own artist brand Alizarin Crimson, and this very, very, very old tube of Virdian that I got from my grandfather. Many, which I have absolutely no idea how old this is, but it's the only Virdian I've got, and it's still perfectly usable. I've sort of done a few paintings with it in the past. So yeah, there we go. So I definitely know where this sort of palette came from, or at least where I first started exploring this palette, and that was, I think it was in the comment section of Jeremy Mann painting. I sort of saw that he was using a reduced palette, and that he sort of first piqued my interest, I guess would be fair to say, about this idea of chromatic greys and colourful greys. And essentially, because you've got the, similar to the burnt sienna and ultramarine palette, you've got sort of two extremes. The burnt sienna and ultramarine palette could be a bit sort of bit better balanced. Sort of that's been part of my engagement with the palette this week, sort of having seen how other people have used it. And sort of, as I mentioned in my stories earlier, like Alexei used it for a palette, but instead of burnt sienna, he had transparent red oxide, and that seemed to fit the ultramarine so much better. So I've ordered a tube of that, and we'll be engaging with that at some point. But this palette definitely sort of seems a bit more balanced to me, because the green and the red of Alizarin Crimson and Viridian are sort of more opposite on the color wheel, so they sort of counteract each other a bit better. They're also quite transparent together. There's just a lot of different things that make it work suitably well for a painting like this. As always, I've just got my quick dry Alkyd white, and again, that's just because I have preference of the faster drying white, so I can work on more things at a faster sort of pace. So hi Sophia, hi Alex, hi Michael, hi Luca. I'll sort of say that all again because I was muted first time. This time as well, I'm not going to go in with an underpainting beforehand on this type of surface compared to the paper I was using last week, because it's got a bit more anti-absorbent of a surface. It means that when I start drawing, or if I were to draw on it with a pencil like this, and then sort of start to get the surface wet, because the wetness sort of stays on top of the surface, it will start to bleed into the pencils and then add the color of the pencils to the palette. And I sort of want to keep it as unadulterated as possible. Saying that, my brushes aren't massively clean because I've been using them today, but they should be clean enough for this purpose. So just going to go straight in with paint for this, and sort of draw through shape instead of through drawing materials. I am expecting this palette, or this sort of painting, to feel a lot less sort of human, I guess, sort of a bit more abstract within the reference, or within the sort of color choices within the reference, because you suddenly got a very different tonality to be working with in this palette, and it is quite odd. A lot of purples, a lot of sort of purpley greys when you sort of get down to it as well. So it will definitely be quite interesting. Hello, Naran. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm amazed as well. I want to say sort of such a big thank you. I really didn't think that many people would take part in the Burnt Sienna challenge. As of so far, I've received 13 submissions, I think, over the last week, and I'm planning to announce the winner tomorrow. So there is still time today and tonight and tomorrow before 6 p.m. ish to do a painting. Part of the reason for it being tomorrow is that I want to, if possible, sort of make a small video with some of the submissions that people submitted, that we can sort of start to look at the variety that the palette afforded us in that scenario. So I will be working with that. I'll be working on that tomorrow at least. So if you do have a submission and you've not sent it, sort of please do just tag me on Instagram, and then I'll be able to see it. And then I've been adding them all to a highlight on my page, so I can just see them all together. But yeah, that would be fantastic. So we are getting in to the painting. This time round, I have definitely sort of opted for a few changes compared to last week. I am painting on, again, a non-absorbent surface. I also am painting a bit smaller, so definitely coming up against the painting of painting with Chebby last week with the Burnt Sienna and Ultramarine palette. I really missed my transparencies because I was painting on the moleskin paper and I was trying to paint directly, so I've not gone back to the painting over the last sort of week. I had sort of not foreseen the lack of transparency you could access whilst painting on the moleskin paper, which definitely sort of cut off a lot of the tones that you can reach within limited palettes. So this time, using a sort of more suitable surface, also painting 20 by 30, partly because it's a lot of energy to try and solve a painting in 3 hours that's like A3. So I've sort of just, hopefully we'll be able to do something a bit more bit more resolved in this session, having it being sort of a more suitable surface and smaller painting. Although obviously, having said this, I'm definitely sort of gearing myself up for a much better painting than last week, so bear that in mind. So Sophia, yes, the challenge was last week. I did a limited palette painting and streamed that. It's on the YouTube channel somewhere. I think I've made a playlist for it, and people sort of engaged with that palette. So they used Burnt Sienna and Ultramarine. It could have been gouache, it could have been watercolor, could have been oil, and just to complete a painting, sort of see what you could do with that palette. And I am going to choose the winner, or some sort of one person that I feel has used the palette sort of for a lot of its merits, and they're going to win the painting that I did last stream. So that is still going until tomorrow, if you're curious to try that. Hi Skyless, nice to see you again. But yeah, if you sort of want to jump in on that, I think on the post of last week's painting, which, let me have a look, is it's the first post on my Instagram channel that isn't pinned. So the fourth sort of square that sort of, I think, has some of the rules, I guess, or sort of some of the details that were put in place last week. So yeah, definitely, if you are interested in checking that out, or sort of contributing and sort of trying to win the piece, please do give it a go. I do think it's an interesting palette to try, although I do think that from now on, instead of the burnt sienna, I'm going to try with the transparent oxide red, because again, it just seems so much better suited for that palette. Now, with that being said, I mentioned last week that I particularly wanted to try that painting of Chebi again, but try it in the palette that I have been using a lot recently, sort of the palette that has been sort of, I've dubbed my own palette. Now I sort of particularly want to engage with that painting of Chebi in that palette, because I feel like the palette would be very suited for that specific painting, that specific reference. So I will be trying that again, because I feel a bit weird about selling or sort of doing a piece and giving away sort of what I am in my mind referring to as like an inferior version of the painting that I will do of Chebi again. Instead of giving away the piece that I painted last week in that stream, I've actually completed another painting using the burnt sienna palette. I've not got a photo of it yet because it's still very wet. I've been painting on that today, but I sort of just feel a bit happier giving away that painting, because I feel like it's just of a higher quality. And yeah, as mentioned, I'll sort of try that painting of Chebi again, but with the sort of less limited palette, sort of my limited palette. So that being said, let's move in on this painting. As last week, I sort of mentioned it in my stories, I've been umming and erring with the idea of it. I will probably give this painting away as well. I'll probably sort of any painting that I'm sort of trying to do a call to action, sort of get people involved and get people painting. I think that I will offer this painting as an incentive, a sort of so if you are sort of curious about that, if you do want to sort of potentially win this painting, all you need to do is try out this palette this week, try out the Virdian and Alizarin Crimson palette, and tag me in it, and then yeah, whoever I think uses the palette's limitations the best will win this painting. So I might also ask a few impartial people about how they think the paintings have gone, so it's not just down to me. But yeah, sort of that's the plan currently with the Monday stream paintings, just to sort of at the moment give them away, or at least if I'm doing a limited palette or something, give that away. If I'm working on something a bit more complete, then I won't be giving that away. And also I have been considering using the Monday live streams to also, or potentially streaming at some other point in the week, whilst I'm painting on work that is longer form, so not something I would complete in the session, not something that I would have start on that stream either, something that's already in progress and just needs a lot of hours putting into it because it's a bigger piece. I'm working on quite a few bigger pieces at the moment, so there definitely are things that I could be working on during a stream. So yeah, if people are interested in that, just do let me know, and I will potentially do some streaming outside of this Monday slot. And as always, sort of, if you do have any questions, please do ask. Otherwise, I will just prowl on to myself. But we are starting to put this painting down. Now, I'm also sort of quite curious about this reference. Having tackled the painting last week, the painting of Cheb last week, I definitely didn't feel that it was the best reference that I could have picked before painting. It did feel sort of, I really struggled with the choosing a reference for last week's painting, and the reference wasn't so suited for a palette. Now, this reference isn't suited for this palette either, but because this reference is sort of already less believable because of the tonalities that you're reaching, it doesn't really matter in the same way. You sort of can skirt around the fact that it's uncanny, again, because the burnt sienna sort of can create quite convincing forms of some skin under light. It becomes sort of a bit uncanny valley because it's close but not super close, but it's close enough for it to sort of seem wrong, like it's trying to be close but it's just failing, which is an interesting sort of space to try and navigate. And I'm just going to try and knock something in. Yeah, painting. So Michael, yeah, painting on raw paper. It is Michael, I hope, as well. It's definitely a different flavor of oil painting. It's very draggy. It feels like you have to drag the paint around a lot more compared to a surface like this, where the painting is quite easy to go on and sort of easy to push around. But it is also that the fact that it has to sort of be quite forcefully put on, it allows you to try and just be a bit more sort of considerate with your marks, because you're sort of able to control them a bit more, but they're also harder to put down, so you can be just labor over the drawing a bit more, think through the marks a bit more as you're putting them down, and as a result sort of have a slower form of painting. I definitely think that finding oil paint for me allowed me to sort of slow my painting down a bit, and in that slowing down, it allowed me to take more time to think through the marks that I was making. Beyond that, or before that, I definitely had a sort of immediacy that I needed to be fulfilled, which, because of the speed of some materials, can allow you to become quite sort of caught up in the act of mark making. But yeah, with the painting with oil on paper, it definitely allowed me to reduce that sort of haste a bit, which again, helpful at the time in which it needed to be helpful for my practice. So if you are finding that within your own work, then maybe that's a thing that you need to engage with. or if you're finding that you want the surface to be, the painting to be sort of more fluid, easier to put on, easier to move around, then maybe it's that you start engaging with a surface that is less absorbent than paper, so you have that option. But I definitely try out both. In terms of this surface that I'm painting on today, which is less absorbent than the paper but still quite smooth, so I like it for those qualities. This is just some MDF that I've got cut from a website in the UK called woodsheets.com or something, and you just put in the size of the boards that you want cut, they cut it to size and deliver it to your door, and then within that I just gave them 2 coats of gesso primer and sanded them down a bit with wet sanding. So the wet sanding sort of allows you to sand something down very, very smoothly, and again sort of keep that consistency that you might sort of like with a smoother surface when you are able to push the paint around a bit more. What's important as well, part of the reason that I also wet sand when I'm sanding, is because wet sanding can help keep the particulates down. So if you're sanding something that you necessarily don't want to be breathing in, like paint, the wet sanding sort of keeps it all together, which is definitely just a bit healthier, a bit safer. So that is definitely a way to think about preparing surfaces. I am currently writing a script for working on a video that is about priming your own surfaces, so that there's just a sort of very clear guide about that and why we should do that, instead of me just rattling it off at the beginning of the stream. Yeah, Alex, like I really dislike Arches paper for how absorbent it is. I've only ever completed one painting in regular oils on it. I have done another painting in the water soluble oils on Arches paper, but the green Ojo painting that I did quite a while ago, that was on Arches paper. And again, it's so absorbent that it just feels very stodgy very quickly. I feel the paint quality does become undesirable quickly. But then also, I particularly like smooth surfaces. I don't like textured surfaces, because I like to be able to control the texture that I'm putting in. And with the Arches paper, because it's got that sort of watercolor-esque texture, it can sort of be very distracting, I think, from the outset. It's like, oh, this is definitely very textured, and I'm not about that, really. I just don't, that's not my favorite sort of surface to be painting. I just prefer, again, I want to be in control of the texture that I'm putting in a painting, because I find it really distracting when a painting has sort of unwarranted texture in areas where it maybe doesn't need texture. It can be a real sort of take me out of the moment of viewing that painting. So I try to be conscious within that of my own work, so people also wouldn't have that experience. Obviously, that being said, maybe you want that sort of texture, maybe you want that sort of engagement, and that's just a decision that you do need to be making. But yeah, it sometimes these decisions or sort of experiments are good for really telling us what we don't like, as well as what we do like. So it might be that you paint with this palette and you go, oh, I hate both of those colors, I never want to touch those palettes again. Yeah, it can be really frustrating experience. You're right, Roxy. Like, it's a very sort of specific surface. It, in its sort of absorbency, it does allow people to create sort of really lovely bits of work, and within that, paint very quickly as well, so it sort of does really suit some people's work. And there are lots of artists that use it in a much better way than I do. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I know it's like, yeah, this isn't for me. But I definitely have had a lot of thoughts recently about sort of what surfaces, the surfaces that I dislike and surfaces that I don't like. Because again, sort of as I start to recommend surfaces a bit more, I just want to know both of their, like, as much as I can about the surface before sort of personally recommending it. But as always, their opinions, and some people will find it much sort of tolerable to paint on than I'm sort of making it out, because maybe it just suits their style of painting. Yeah, people do sort of so yeah, Michael, people do apply gesso to the surfaces. To For my own personal sort of experience, I think that if you're going to be gessoing something, you might as well gesso a board instead of gessoing the paper. You generally only paint on paper, or like moleskin paper, without sort of too many concerns of not longevity, but sort of the archivability of work. And it might as well sort of just be like, yeah, if I'm going to gesso something, I'll gesso something that is sort of needs gessoing, because I'm going to spend the time doing it anyway. Now, sort of starting to just ramble and not really explain what I'm doing. Just starting to work on this hand. Now, again, because I'm just going in straight with paint today, a lot of that is just sort of finding shapes, and then if a shape's working, then I sort of keep going with it. If it's not working, I'll sort of revisit it. But specifically just trying to keep it really, really vague at this point. Just keeping it big shapes that are really easy to push about, so I can find sort of the shapes that I need through just sort of contextualizing what's on the surface. I'm able to just start pushing things around until they start working. If it's not working, I can sort of, again, start putting things beside it, taking things away, and navigating the space in that manner. So there is not necessarily too much of a set course for painting like this, but it sort of it doesn't work until it starts working, you know? And sometimes that's just the way that painting is. Let's fuzz that up. Now, hi Luke, nice to see you. No, yes, so actually, Sophia, the permanent green light and cadmium red is a palette that I challenged to Neil Cunning recently, because we were talking about that bright green lake, and he sort of had mentioned that he wasn't quite sure how to incorporate it into his palette, so I sort of challenged him and poked the bear a bit of this idea of, well, if you can neutralize the bright green bright green lake with an equally as powerful red, you can sort of have the same sort of experience. So that will actually be a palette at some point. But yeah, sort of, I think with these paintings, or at least to be sort of in the works or in the list for receiving the the stream paintings, it does have to be of the same palette. But it just means that you're already prepared for when we eventually get to the red-green palette, which I have absolutely no idea when that will be, but I'm sure it will be at some point. I see Nick as well. Hi, Nick. Now, this reference is, I think, a reference that was emailed or sent to me via Insta, but it was quite a while ago. Was it Insta? It must have been Insta. But it's from May last year, so it has been a while since this reference was sent to me. But I'm sure I've got the name saved somewhere now. Again, just sort of quite loosely starting to play with some shapes to try and find out the distances that I need between these sort of features. Really, at the moment, I'm really not trying to go for any form of finish at this point. I'm just trying to get some shape design down, figure out what's happening, which means that it definitely doesn't look like it's meant to until it does. But I have full belief that, I shouldn't say it, I have some belief that it will get there. Turn that up. Yeah, so Sophia, it's the bright green lake. I've used quite a lot in the past. I've not used it recently as I've sort of been so focused on sort of my specific palette, but it comes up quite a lot in a lot of my work, for sure. I do think it's a very usable color, but it just requires a lot of what's the right sort of term for it? Caution to be used, because it's just so powerful that it can really just completely overwhelm your drawings so easily. So it is a great pigment, but again, dangerous one. Definitely not the most crazy color I've ever come across, though. That definitely goes to Landridge Paints Pyrrole Red. It is crazy. It's the most. It's so powerful. It's not even usable. But it's a very strange pigment for sure. Let's knocking in this shirt now. This shirt in the reference is yellow, but we don't have a yellow, so it's now green, mint, something there. Again, I just want to sort of get more paint down to sort of understand a bit better where things will have to go, because at the moment I've sort of just been taking it from one point out, but I sort of need to plan a bit more for the moment. Let's bring that in, something like that. And how kind of like that, but we'll keep it in for now. Let's just tidy that up a bit. Now background doesn't need to be dealt with too much. Something is really confusing me though, so let's try and deal with that sooner rather than later. So trying to create the largest, or sort of at least the most neutral dark tone I can create with this palette. So just straight red and green, no sort of white at this point. I'm then going to tint it green because that's my cool color for the hair, and find these shapes because the hair is very dark. So although it's useful to have sort of the drawing in it, I need to put a more accurate value pattern down so I can find anything correct in terms of engaging with these tones. Let's just knock this in. It also comes all the way down. Something like that. Find the shapes. And definitely extend this side. Bring this down. So as I sort of mentioned a bit earlier, that because of the surface that I'm using in this painting, Nick, that if I was to use sort of this blue pencil to do some drawing, if I then sort of get that blue wet, I don't know how much that's starting to show on the camera, but it is starting to tint the colors around it, which is exactly why I also try to avoid using graphite in any painting or under sketch before painting, because it just sort of can start to grey out your colors really quickly. So for that reason, I've not done a drawing, because I just wanted to keep the paint as pure as possible. So just going straight in with paint. It definitely is a different sort of set of proceedings when going straight in with paint, instead of finding sort of the edge through investigating with line. It's now about sort of putting shapes and colors next to each other to sort of see if it's translating or reading well. So it's using a different set of sort of thinking, I guess, than drawing, but it can be faster sometimes. I don't know, in the past, or at least so far, I have preferred to engage with the streams with drawing, because it sort of allows me to balance that section a bit, sort of start to resolve a lot of questions when I'm in that drawing stage before moving on to the paint, and then as a result I can sort of move through the painting bit a bit more swiftly. But it's still very experimental with the streams as well, to sort of see what is working and what's not working, compared to last week. I before the stream specifically did absolutely nothing. I sort of just wanted to make sure I had as much energy as possible for the stream, whereas today I've been painting since 8 hours ago, so I've sort of already done a full stint painting, and sort of hopefully as a result will be a bit more warmed up. We'll see. I'm either going to be warmed up or just burnt out, so it's either going to be a good painting that happens quite quickly, or it's going to be a difficult painting that I have to argue with a lot. But we'll see. We'll find out what happens. I was wondering what your time zone is. Yes, so I have time zone. We are in GMT time zone here, so UK time. So it's currently it's currently 6:45, which means that like I would probably be aiming to announce the winner at like 7:15 tomorrow. So 24 hours from now. And yeah, I had a stream with Nick, the darling that Nick is. Sort of let me come in and stream with him when he's so busy with the book, and sort of just before they flew out to deal with all the book orders, he streamed with me, which I was very thankful for. And hopefully when he gets back from Houston as well, we can do another stream, because it was a lot of fun, and we'll just talk about video games and stuff. Hello, not serious, so serious gaming. Nice to see you. Roxy, you're totally right. Sometimes that is just how art be, how art do. Now, let's see if I can shift this to the green. Interestingly, not only is the paint very different, the Virdian feels very different, it definitely feels old as a paint. It just feels a little bit stiff. Oh yes, and not so serious gaming. I am doing very well, thank you. Going swimmingly. Having a lot of fun with with Fortnite at the moment. So that's been the main gaming session. So, which isn't too bad. But yeah, the green here, sort of kick that back. Definitely want to change this sort of tonality to sort of separate it from the ceiling, sort of wall and ceiling, two separate things. I'm also going to bring that right back in to the hairline as well, so I can go back over this with the hair to make it look like this is behind the hair. I'm going to leave that little ridge of a Liz there, so it sort of starts to affect the edge quite nicely. With this lens as well, I've definitely got to be a bit more cautious with where my head is, so it's not in frame. Let's describe a bit of this shirt. It doesn't feel too bland at the point of moving on. Bring this crease in. Nice purple crease. Now, do I need to describe any more of this shirt when I'm here? Let's go down. This shadow shape is very warm, so alizarin it is, and then the head, the shadow of the head is sort of around here. Let's see how this is reading. Now, because I'm less proficient with this palette for sure, definitely less used to this palette, there is going to be a bit more of a trial and error, I think, than the last painting. where I just sort of have to see if things are working or not. I don't want to work on these after the stream, but I will work on them if I don't like them enough. Now I've only got to do your logo. Yeah, I mean, maybe one day. Maybe it's maybe one day I can sort of do a logo, but it's been absolutely manic this side with teaching. It's been a lot of fun, but definitely a lot of time to do teaching at the moment, but I do love it. Now let's bring in that sort of neck shadow shape, and then this shirt just needs to wrap around the neck a little bit more. Bring that t-shirt in front of that shadow shape as well. So starting to sort of build the value pattern within this painting, and starting to get established somewhat. Let's define this knuckle and finger when I'm here. Got 1, 2, and then this third knuckle in this sequence to get this shape in, down and around. So I definitely want to definitely no sort of qualms or anything about trying to use one of the limited palettes as well, but trying to do it in a different medium other than oil. If you paint in acrylic paint, or you paint in gouache, you paint in watercolor, whatever, and you've got access to those colors and you want to give it a go, that's absolutely fine. Sort of I'll still consider those paintings in the same limited palette, so they can be judged or sort of entered into the competition. So if you do have that opportunity and you are interested in, then yeah, please do give it a go. Right, getting close to sort of having done the first full pass, making a lot of mess. I don't know why, but seemingly whenever I use Alizarin Crimson, it just ends up going everywhere. So my hands are filthy already, which I don't like. It makes me feel very weird when I'm painting. Sort of, I just yeah, Virdian is a weird color. Like I suppose it's because I mean, I don't really have like a ton of greens anyway in my palette. Definitely less green than anything else. I will have, as mentioned earlier, I have the bright green lake, but other than that, I sort of will mix most of my greens from whatever yellow I'm using and whatever blue I'm using for that painting, so it sort of stays within the harmony of that specific palette. But I suppose if I engaged with plein air painting a bit more, then you might have a bit more use for a Virdian. I don't know. I need to ask a plein air painter, really. Over the last few days, on Friday in fact, I did a demonstration during my life drawing lesson, and I painted on a spray painted surface which I had prepared for an experiment I was going to do. And long story short, the experiment got answered because it really wasn't a very nice experience to be painting on the spray painted surface. I used to like it. I used to like the fact that it was so non-absorbent, but just in this scenario painting, it just felt really horrible. Just too slick for the paint to grip at all, and as a result, sort of just end up scraping through the paint a lot, which sort of just gives it a scratchy look. So I've also just knocked over my water bottle. That's what that sound was. If that was horrendously loud, I'm very, very sorry. So just gonna have some coffee. Obviously, handy point to ask any questions during coffee break, as I literally can't speak as I've got coffee in my mouth, so it means that I will engage with that time reading. Oh. No, I really liked your painting as well, Alex, as well. I did think it was a nice painting, so congrats on that. Congrats on doing a nice limited palette painting, which they're hard. They're really hard. Limited palette paintings. They have an I say they're really hard. They have a very high ceiling for skill. Sort of, they are easy to engage with in some regards, and then very, very difficult to sort of master. I definitely don't feel like I've got mastery over any limited palette. I don't think I've got mastery over any palette. One, as I mentioned last week, one of the better examples, or one of the artists, my Virdian is undefined because it's very, very old. It says that it's Vert Emerald, Cora Moxie Udgrin Furig, Vert Esmeralda. But it doesn't have a pigment number on it that I can see. I presume that it's old enough that they didn't know. If any artists asked for the pigment numbers, they'd be like, no, we're not telling you what's in our paint. But so yeah, I can't tell. I was sort of contemplating doing it with a phthalo green lake, because again, the Virdian is so old that I'm sort of unable to verify that it is in fact Virdian. But I'm sort of taking it that the label wouldn't lie to me, you know. I'm hoping that the label wouldn't lie to me, but it probably is. But yeah, that is again a very, very old tube of Virdian. Not the oldest tube of paint I've got, but probably getting there. But yeah, when my grandfather was an oil painter, although he sort of was a very sort of proud amateur, I'd say, never really wanted to move further within it, sort of wanted to keep it quite low key, I guess. And when he passed away a few years back, I got his old, I got most of the art materials that he had accrued over many years, which included some oil paints, which are so old that they have metal caps instead of plastic caps, and you've got to hold the cap of the metal over a flame to expand the lid to open up the paint and even get access to it. So you have to hold these oily paints over an open flame, and it's like, that doesn't sound very safe. But again, sort of back in the day, they didn't care. So, but yeah, it was definitely very interesting to sort of have a look at those. A lot of them are sort of split as well, or sort of have seeped out of the lid so much that they've sort of become non-usable. But there are definitely a few of them which were salvageable. But I presume that oil paint doesn't really go off if it's properly sealed. That would be, I would hazard that anyway. I would make that my assumption. Now, it's definitely starting to find a bit more of the shape in this portrait. As often in a lot of my portraits, I'm sort of now questioning some of the decisions that I made. Partly because I tried to do that throughout several stages of the painting, but specifically within portraiture, I know that I have a tendency to sort of go larger with features. So sometimes I just like to sort of check that before I progress on any further, or sort of before I solidify and start to handle the details in any bit. I just want to make sure that I have actually scaled the whole drawing well, and that sort of fitting within what I'm trying to reach. The Alizarin Crimson definitely sort of allows you to navigate through a lot of these pinks, whereas the sort of, obviously the Virdian, you've got this sort of minty colour. I will start to navigate the purples that you can get within the this palette, but I just want to make sure that I can explain things within the simplicity that I can get at the moment. So Michael, I really like the idea of plein air painting. I am a very cold human being generally when I'm outside, and I don't like being cold. So every time that I've wanted to paint, it's generally because it's like really frigid and lovely and cold outside, and then you sort of stand outside for like 10 minutes and your hands freeze over, and it's like, okay, I need to engage with this in a different way. I think if I had some friends that were local that would also go plein air painting, that would be a little bit more encouraging, because you could all be cold together. But so as a result, I've sort of have very limited experience. I have done some on the beach and sort of painted in a few scenarios, but yeah, it's definitely something that I want to engage with more. Particularly, I want to be doing some nocturne paintings. I'd love to do some nocturne paintings, because yeah, that's definitely one of the things that interests me more when I'm walking around late at night and I sort of see the sort of lights all kick on, and you've suddenly got all of this false illumination coming from these artificial lights. That definitely sort of interests my curiosities of trying to describe that. But yeah, often at that time as well, especially if you're in London, it's yeah, I don't want to bring any attention to myself either. Just want to get home and go to bed, because I've always been teaching at that point or something. I'm always leaving London after a very long day, and because I don't live close enough in London to sort of walk or anything, I have to get the train. I'm sort of stuck within the time limit of public transport. But yeah, maybe as part of this Monday stream, I will go out plein air painting and prompt everybody to go out plein air painting as well, and have a potential palette or potential painting for grabs to anyone who does. That sounds like I could definitely work it out in the future. But yeah. Oh, hi, Marina. It's nice to see you. Nice to have you here. Right. Yeah, After Rain. I do really love sort of sunsets. When you're, especially winter sunsets, and even within that, especially with sort of Christmas lights as well. I am a big fan of fairy lights and stuff. I think that they are very enjoyable. So anything like that definitely strikes interest. But yeah, as you say, after it's been raining and sort of wet streets are wet and reflecting all the light, that's also really interesting personally. But again, it's like with many things, you can only do it if you sort of carve out the time for it. And at the moment I have been trying to carve out the time for many things, which means that I'm quite tight with my time at the moment. It's not got much spare time, and that's also part of the one of the lovely moments of the Monday streams, is that it's always time to paint. But yeah, maybe maybe Alex, Richmond Park in London, sort of, or Richmond Park in Richmond, Virginia. I sort of always forget as well that there is a delay from when I see the messages to when the messages pop up. Yeah, like red light reflected from cars, sort of a lot. There is generally a lot of like different points of illumination in like cityscapes, in which you have all of this crazy light sort of being reflected, and then when it's raining, you've then got all of this light that's reflecting sort of from these more reflective surfaces. So it just sort of builds up very complex lighting scenarios. Really lovely sort of moments. But yeah, I do. There's something about sort of that artificial light that is really quite pleasant. There's a painting by an artist called Brendan Kelly, and it's definitely sort of one of my favorite paintings. Definitely like lots of inspiration from it. But it's a man being reflected by a Coca-Cola machine. I just think it's absolutely like delightful as a painting. Definitely sort of just goals of narrative lighting for sure. But hopefully one day I will find a suitably lit vending machine that I can take some photos, some portrait photos from. So at the moment, just sort of navigating this hand a little bit, trying to cool down some of the pinkiness in some of the areas, just sort of by starting to disrupt the pink with some green. And again, because it's sort of within this palette, sort of immediately not trying to be lifelike, I definitely feel like it's a bit freer to sort of work through and work with. But I will be very interested to sort of hear what you've all got to say about the palette. Sort of, it will definitely be an interesting week because it's just very different from the burnt sienna palette. Now, let's definitely starting to get somewhere. Whether or not it's somewhere I want to stay is undecided yet, but definitely don't hate it. Definitely don't love it. Oh, and Nadine, nice to see you, Nadine, as well. Again, thank you for your submission with the palette earlier. Nadine is another paper painter as well. Sort of, I think it's Moleskine you paint on, Nadine. I think, is it Moleskine? It's definitely like, it's not Arches paper, is it? I hope so. Now that I've sort of committed to that statement, I hope it's not Arches paper. Let's bring in the sort of start of this eyebrow, using this point to sort of start again, redrawing if needed. Yes, it is Moleskine. I'm glad that I was correct. So I'm definitely noticing I just need a little bit more space for the temple here. So just gonna, yeah, like it's interesting sort of what you have to be forced to sort of work with these limited palettes. Now, I've always thought I was very, very fortunate that when I was at college I had very fantastic art teachers, and during my time at college, we were expected to sort of present our work in these books, sort of A3 spiral bound C white sketchbooks, and you'd have to present all of your work in it. The interesting sort of aspect about presenting the work in the books was that you had to make the books function as books, sort of, so that they would allow you to sort of connect your work together. So they were meant to be sort of pieces within themselves, and having to engage with that sort of form of presentation really just allowed the work, sort of allowed an understanding of sort of how to solve problems within work and presenting work. And I definitely sort of have that as an understanding that, like, a lot of art is sort of about having to resolve problems, and whether or not it's like, okay, I'm trying to resolve the tonality of this skin, I'm trying to resolve aspects of light, I'm trying to resolve composition. When you engage with limited palettes, you sort of have to engage with resolving a painting without having the full range of your paints. So it sort of forces you to make decisions, and sort of forces you to make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. And I think that is just a really beneficial time as a painter. So it's sort of why I'm very curious as to make these sets of live streams into prompts to sort of get people engaging with different palettes and sort of forcing their own problem solving within their work. I hope that it definitely sort of is seen in that sort of manner, that it's this is how we can become better artists, by sort of having to deal with more and more complex scenarios and sort of navigate more scenarios where we don't have all of the tools at our disposal. All the tools at our disposal. Not disposal. Disposure. I don't think that's even a word. That's when I start to show the signs that I've been painting since 9 hours. Painting for 9 hours today. Madness. It definitely doesn't feel like I've got 9 hours of work done, but such is painting life. I'm just gonna thin out this hairline to make it seem like the hair is actually sort of coming out of the head instead of it just being placed on top. So just want to engage with that a little bit more. I'm going to use that same color to sort of reinforce the change of temperature in the eyebrow, to make it again feel less pinky and more grey. And then I suppose I need to start working on the features, really, but I feel like it's going to be hard, so I've been avoiding it. Let's have a quick look. I'm just describing a bit more of the shadows. Like that. And then let's bring that shadow up more, so we have the cheek engaging a bit more. Yeah, like I definitely think that we sort of I've come to a sort of understanding that it's really important for us as artists to make sure we check back in with opinions we have made at different points during our careers. And it is very common that sort of you find yourself on a palette, and that you'll sort of just stick with that palette because that's the palette you may have had a breakthrough within painting whilst using that palette, and sort of attribute it to the palette itself. What is quite interesting is that that's not always the case, and sometimes we have just breakthroughs in paintings because of observation, and that allows us to engage with materials or palettes in a different way. So if we can sort of take some time every so often to go back and test things that we have made a decision about in the past, be that a palette, or sort of liking a set of colors or not liking a set of colors, trying a reference that you've tried in the past but don't like, whatever it is, sort of, it is always amazing to sort of understand just how much we have moved on, and sort of how much more we know to when we last made that decision. And as a result, it might be that, like, oh, I didn't know what I was sort of talking about really when I made the decision to stick with this palette, and now I know a bit more. I can sort of answer that question a bit better. That's definitely what it's been like for myself, and sort of re-engaging with specific palettes, specific colors, and some references. I'm sort of finding myself, just because I'm a better painter, I can sort of use them in a easier or sort of more usable manner to what I could. One of the big parts of that, definitely one of the big sort of things that I want to go back and revisit is acrylic paint, because I've always decided that I don't like acrylic paint. But when I decided that, and I was painting, I knew absolutely nothing about painting. I sort of was just trying to make whatever worked, and it sort of makes sense that I didn't like the paintings that I was doing at the time, because they weren't like great paintings, because I didn't know how to paint. And in very brief moments when I have tried acrylic for demonstrations at teaching, it's definitely seemed more usable, and so at some point I will just sort of sit down properly with it and see what happens, see what I can get out of that palette now, or sort of that material now. That's not going to be very 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 long time though. Too many eggs being in the basket. That's not the saying. Hi Nicole, thank you. Enjoy painting this evening, and it's great to have you here. Now let's tilt this to the green, sort of end of the spectrum. Let's knock it back a tiny bit though. It's a bit too green. Madness. Bring that eyeshadow down, and the front edge of this nose, and let's go similar sort of value pattern here. Let's bring that sort of minty reflected shadow in the nose. I have a few paintings on the go that I've started in the last week. Very, very excited for, which include a still life and a cityscape, as well as all the other paintings that I sort of have on the go at the moment, which is way too many, but I'm enjoying painting. So is there anything, can you really have too much painting? I mean, I feel like the people watching this all have a similar mindset that yes, more painting is good painting. But we will see. Now, Nicole, are you painting with a limited palette, or are you just painting today? And yes, as if anyone does want to ask anything, please do. I have just sort of been painting and chatting, and I've not really been chatting about this painting. I've just been chatting at large. Right, let's... Yeah, I definitely like the idea as well of giving away these paintings. I have way too many paintings. So don't know when to choose so Alex has asked, don't know when to use transparent or opaque. Do you mean sort of choosing before painting, choosing the colors, like choosing your palette before painting, or actually choosing whilst painting whether or not you should be painting in a transparent or opaque manner? Nicole, you are a much braver woman than I am for painting commissions. That is not a fun time for me. I am not a fan of commissions at the moment, but I understand having to do them, you know. Did I say? I think yes. I think I said that incorrectly. Anyway, never matter. Yeah, I'll wait for Alex to respond before giving him the wrong answer. I'm gonna start sort of placing the eyes. I just want to make sure that the eyes are sort of looking in the right sort of manner, and then where that means I need to bring in the shadow. Well, I definitely hope that that's the case, Sophia. I just sort of want to sort of be a bit chatting a bit and sort of having people paint along. Partly because I just like chatting, and it's if it helps sort of make me make good decisions in terms of starting a painting or making sure that I've got time set for painting, then it's all good for me. So Alex, I guess when actually painting, I'm not that experienced to never know. So yeah, I think within that it's really worth sort of understanding a few separate paints for their transparencies sort of separately. One of the ways that I think can be really fun to navigate around this that sort of manner, I can definitely set up a prompt for it as well, is doing a single pigment painting. So you have just one paint, and generally I will try to mix a paint so it's not just out the tube in those scenarios. But then you just have to work with transparencies to create your value, and again, sort of that can really start to kickstart your brain into thinking about transparencies in a different manner. Some paints are sort of more oriented towards working in transparencies than others. So some paints definitely have a better time sort of navigating that space. What's really interesting about painting with transparencies, or sort of painting in a single palette like that, single pigment palette, is it forces you to sort of engage with mark making. So not only are you making marks to put tones down, you're also removing paint to create different values. So you have to sort of think not only in terms of adding paint but also removing paint, and that is a good exercise to get into, because if you think about all paintings like that, even if you're not using just a limited palette, it will definitely make you a better painter, because you'll have better control of how to manipulate the paint. But yeah, some transparencies sort of lend themselves a bit easier, or sort of a bit more forgiving in terms of navigating. Alizarin is definitely a transparent color that is sort of comes up in a lot of people's palettes. Part of the reason that it's sort of easy to navigate some of the transparencies of Alizarin is because of its like fleshy blood sort of undertone, like underneath the skin, sort of is kind of what Alizarin is, sort of. So it sort of works quite well to have that inner transparency under the meat, as it were. And because skin is translucent, it sort of ends up coming across in that sort of layering can be quite effective. How is this looking on the YouTube? I don't usually accept commissions, but I was lucky enough to be asked to work on something which really goes with what I enjoy painting. Oh, so it's a painting reference. Fantastic. I think if someone was to ask commission me for a movie painting, and they just gave me the movie and said I would like a painting from this movie, I would be a lot more tempted to take on a commission like that rather than sort of a I'd like you to paint my dog sort of commission. I'd like you to paint my grandson. I'd like you to paint this bowl of pears. I don't know. Now, let's give that hood a little bit of definition just in the eye. Yeah, definitely sort of enjoying the choice to paint smaller than last week. It is definitely a big demand to try and paint something that is large or like A3 like glass paintings in a single session. Definitely sort of setting yourself up for a very, very difficult challenge, whereas this painting this size definitely a bit easier for the time frame. Gives me a bit more time to navigate some of the areas to sort of resolve them in a better way. So hopefully it means that once the stream is over, the painting is also done, which I didn't quite feel with the painting last week. I sort of was tired and had to stop streaming, but sort of wanted to continue resolving the painting. Part of the reason that I've decided to resolve that painting further, but in my normal palette, or at least start that painting again, but in my normal palette. I might also stream that as a sort of bonus stream. Who knows? Who knows? It depends on sort of how much time I have coming up. Lessons finish, so I stopped teaching in early December. I think it's the 11th is my last day teaching, so from that point I might have a bit more time to do fun internet streamy things, but also I do have a lot of painting that I'd like to get finished before the end of the year, so we will see. Now let's grab something very green for this shadow here. So question in the chat of which do you enjoy more, painting from life or painting from photograph? So Michael, I think it's really dependent, because part of the reason I really like painting from photographs, but that is also because when I'm painting from photographs, I'm in my studio. I generally have music on. I'm able to take breaks when I want to, and sort of it's quite a nice relaxing time, or at least it's has the capacity to be relaxing, because it's not always relaxing. Whereas when I'm painting from life, I'm sort of demonstrating, or I'm painting in a life drawing class with friends, and that's also very enjoyable. But I'm not sort of ever expecting to be doing sort of like my best work, because the setup is very sort of temperamental, and I won't have sort of access to a lot of materials, or sort of a lot of the time my plein air kit, or sort of my kit that I travel with, is very, very limited. It's even become more limited since I've started painting with my palette a bit more. I gave that palette a test run on Friday, first time I've like painted out in life with that palette, in which it was just a demonstration for class. And yeah, I think that that's sort of all I'm going to be taking in the future. But yeah, that does sort of limit a lot of choices. If I had a big enough studio in which I could paint from life more sort of like easily, like with setup, and sort of you just could have someone turn up and you start painting immediately, maybe I'd prefer that more. But yeah, at the moment I definitely sort of prefer painting from photographs more. But any sort of opportunity to paint from life I will definitely take, especially painting from life with friends. I think that's one of with art friends, obviously. If you if you take your non-art friends to life drawing, they'll probably just feel very sort of resentful that you're taking them to something that you're really good at and that they're gonna be really bad at. And that's not always a fun time for everybody. But yeah, I sort of am very for painting with friends, if you can, and sort of trying to create that space, because I always think that painting from life is a great place to experiment. And I definitely sort of like to be, I like to think that I go into those spaces with that in mind. And if you can get some friends who are also of that mindset, it can be a very, very fun experience in which you can learn quite a lot. So yeah, definitely recommend painting from life, specifically with friends. But that being said, I also teach life drawing in the Art Academy in London. So there you go. That is my advert for teaching. Come paint with me if you're in London, or come get taught by me if you're in London. If you're a mutual, then come be my guest in my paint class. Let's bring this hair in front. It's definitely like a big single strand, which I'm actually going to try and create by removing this paint. Advertise in Edinburgh. Well, so I would love to go up to Edinburgh, not only to see young Neil, but also just see the National Gallery up there. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much for backing me up. Chris has been a student of mine for every single Sunday this entire year, which I'm very, very grateful for. But no, yeah, I'd love to go up to Edinburgh, Marina. I understand that you're also in Edinburgh, sort of close to Neil-ish. And I'm sure at some point there will be several opportunities to go up to Edinburgh. So young. Yes, you are. You're a young man. Although, by Roy's standard, Neil, you are not a young man, I'm afraid to say. You cannot receive that prize, which I know you must be heartbroken about. whereas I definitely am still a young man, according to the Royal Institute of Oil Paint, until May. So I'm taking it at the moment. That is a fine bit of something I'm quite happy to accept. Now, let's bring this shadow up in its warm. And in the same way as last week, I'm navigating this painting in terms of separating and sort of deciding that these parts of the painting are cool colours. Yes, the RP is a 35 limit to being a young artist. But no, that's not a problem, Neil. I hope that you are having a fantastic time being back at work today and are no longer answering emails. Although I doubt that is the case. I presume you're still answering emails. Their category is up to 35. Yeah, see, that definitely means you are young, compared to that criteria. I think I was actually thinking the other day it would be very interesting to see a sort of 35 and under show at one of the mall galleries, because between Kenyo and sort of teaching, and I think I know quite a lot of artists on in and around London that sort of would be interested in exhibiting, but I have absolutely no idea how you navigate that sort of space. Are you making dinner? Hey, I'm making dinner. Thank you very much, Alex. Yeah, hopefully going to be my intention is to because I already have a lot of paint. I am definitely sort of an artist that will be very quick to pick up tubes of paint to sort of experiment with. I find it quite interesting in part of my as part of my practice. So at the moment, I don't know what capacity I'm going to be doing it in, but I would definitely like to give away at least some paint, probably some Galunsky palettes, but I don't know to what criteria. Probably watching the stream or something, commenting on the stream when I next do a painting in that palette, which I am itching to do. I like painting in that palette. I am currently missing painting in that palette, so the sort of next week I might paint in that palette instead of the Alizarin Crimson and Burnt Sienna, and who knows. I'll decide that later. Oh, Alex, 35 in July. Terrible. That means not a young artist anymore. I don't know what to tell you. But I'm just sorry for your family. No, yeah, so I will be engaging with a lot of Winsor & Newton paint soon as well. Which is very helpful because I know that they do, although they are under different names, they do have 3 out of the 4 paints that I need for that palette. So yeah, hopefully I can scramble together the other paint from something, and I can give away some of those palettes, which will be fun, because I think I am really excited about that palette. I think it's just interesting to paint with. I think part of the reason that it works very well is because you're sort of tackling your bases of light. You're tackling your extreme warm and your extreme cools, and then sort of giving yourself the space in between those extremities to sort of find the neutrals and navigate the piece like that. It definitely has been a really fun palette to be doing some movie paintings in. So I've been doing 2 more paintings from In the Mood for Love, which are both in that palette, and it just works so well for that movie. The tonality of that movie just suits that palette very well, which sort of is good, because I think that that movie has a fantastic vibe. So to have a palette that sort of can navigate that vibe is sort of good to me, you know. Let's bring that down. But yeah, definitely interested in a movie prompt as well, talking to some of the guys in the Kenyo Film It group, and sort of next year we'll definitely be creating some prompts and doing some streams in which painting from movie stills, sort of challenging people to do that as well. And again, at least for the sort of next foreseeable future, I do think that the Monday paintings or paintings done in these streams will be given away. So yeah, if stay tuned if you sort of want to participate in those challenges and potentially win some paintings. But yeah, I sort of I don't want to sort of do consistent paintings on a Monday and have them sit in my studio, because I already have like over 400 paintings in storage here that have just never sold, and sort of no longer on my website and stuff, and I don't particularly want to be adding to that number. So yeah, I think I'll just give them away, and then I don't have to deal with storing them, and then I can just try to sell the sort of personal work. But who knows? Now, definitely with painting with a smaller size substrate like this is allowing me to navigate the painting a lot faster, which means that I'm getting it into a state in which I can start to increase sort of the effect of some parts to make them read well. A big thought that I've been having whilst painting recently is like, if I'm trying to paint an effect of light, I'll be thinking like, oh, what do I need to do to sell this effect of light that I'm trying to describe? Sort of how do I navigate having that being read clearly so that it is clear to what I'm trying to sort of achieve within the paint? Very, very difficult question to answer, but it's at least to be conscious of that is better than to not be conscious than that, I think. Otherwise it's just sort of trying to paint without not knowing what you're trying to achieve whilst painting that specific part. I want to get that sort of break of the wrist line just as that texture changes, and sort of just disrupt this line a bit, because it's currently too straight, and in reality there's a lot more shape to it. So let's start bringing some shape into it. Okay, well that's coming out somewhat. It's getting there. Still got a bit to go. I am just going to fill up my water bottle. For when I knocked it over earlier, it unfortunately emptied. So I'm going to grab some water, but I will be back in a moment. Right, sorry about that, but I am now ready to be hydrated. Fantastic, right. I'm back to painting. So, let's tackle this other eye. That seems like a sensible thing to try and tackle at the moment. Now, again, sort of just going straight in with drawing with the paint, but again, sort of just starting to put shapes down that are sort of an assumption of what I'm painting. And then I can take those assumptions and then make a better sort of judgment for him. Oh my god, you're seeing Sid from this. Is it like. Let's see if I can. Oh my. This paint really is thick. They left without me. They do this every year. He's got a weird. Like, I can't even remember what shape. It's like. No, that looks just more like a bear. But there you go. There is or a puppy. It seems like a little puppy. There you go. That's actually quite effective at describing the nose. It sort of catches the light in the right way that a dog's nose does. That sort of texture that a dog's nose has. But let's throw this down. I'm really fighting the urge to Google what Sid looks like from Ice Age, but maybe when I'm a bit further in the painting, I will Google that next time I break to sip my coffee. I will Google that now. Yeah, that's sort of working. I've mentioned I mentioned it on the stream with Nick the other day, but I've gone from having my reference on my monitor to having my monitor on my phone, and then actually having the stream or the video footage from the painting being on the monitor instead, because it's very helpful to be able to see the painting sort of at that size constantly whilst I'm painting it, because I don't have the space in this studio to sort of step back and get any distance to the painting to sort of see it in its entirety. I've sort of been able to swap that function, or sort of have that function with the footage from the camera, which has been a interesting sort of change in the way that I'm painting my work, and I do think it is making the work sort of easier, I guess, or sort of easier for me to have that ability to see the painting from afar. Is that eye too far over? Yeah, that feels a bit better. There we go. I just want to grab some green without ruining the dog. The little puppy. Paint pupper. Some texture for the eye. Let's go like that. That's better. Knock up. He's okay. He's still with us. That's fine. Right, let's start. Let's get this a bit more fluid, so I can do some sort of loose. There's paint marks here. Try and get that sort of spring of the hair. Whoop. So there again. Whoop. Whoop. That's too bright, but bring that down. That sort of gives that texture a bit. Again, let's try and keep this very, very loose, so I only have to do it once to get that effect, because I feel like trying to repaint it will just kill the freshness of that. So maybe one too many there, something like that. And let's bring this light section in, and then kill some of the color on this side. Like that, maybe, and then cut back in to get that flick up. Same here, like that. There we go. I think that's hair described. Maybe I'm sorry, puppy. There we go. Maybe dulling this down. And also, let's see if I can give that a tint of green instead of the tint of red on this side, just to something like that, maybe. Okay, right, let's now it's time for me to move my hair out the way. Now it's time for lips, I feel, where definitely could fall apart, which is always lovely. Always a reassuring thought to have whilst sort of going into a section of a painting. It's like, oh yep, this is where the painting could become a bad painting very quickly. I just find that knuckle a bit more as well, just before otherwise I'll be questioning my knuckle placement. Okay, right. Bloop. Let's really get something very pale for the philtrum. And let's also kill that bit. A bit more. And also lighten it. Like that. I think sort of that idea, Michael, of being able to imagine what your painting looks like beforehand requires a huge amount of sort of understanding, I guess, of mark making. Sort of, I think when people say that, what they're really sort of saying is that they're sort of starting to see where they can start describing certain elements of the painting in paint. So it'll be like, oh yeah, I can imagine that I will handle this section with this sort of brushwork. And that requires you to have sort of your own arsenal of marks that you can sort of pull out and use to describe things. So I wouldn't expect you to be able to think that sort of at the earlier stages of trying to learn how to paint. I definitely do think that comes with a bit of like experience and muscle memory more than anything. When you sort of again have that, you've started to resolve things in paintings. You're coming back to resolve things that you have already resolved, and you're sort of able to preempt knowing how you will resolve something because you've done it before. So I definitely wouldn't feel sort of too sort of annoyed if that isn't coming easily. There are definitely paintings that I go into as well where I have absolutely no idea what the painting is going to look like. It's not every painting, but there are some scenarios in which I sort of need to start painting to then give myself something to respond to before it sort of gets decided one way or the other. Because like anything, if you have that idea in your mind, it might sort of stop you from exploring or experimenting, and sort of stilting your progress because you're sort of like, okay, I expect it to look like this, So I'm going to paint it until it looks like that. But sometimes you've just got to let the paint sort of do what the paint wants to do, and then try and sort of manage it into that image. If that makes sense, it's sort of a bit beyond words sometimes how to navigate painting, but hopefully with enough wrong words you can sort of explain the right idea. But I hope that helps. Let's cut front of the knuckle there. Give it that sort of pointiness. Same here. So I am currently listening to music as I'm painting, just with one ear in, so I can sort of make sure I'm not talking too loudly or anything. But I definitely sort of help or find it helpful to paint with music playing. And this is the first time I did it. I didn't do it last 2 weeks. Just to sort of, again, experiment, see if it's worth trying. And it's definitely sort of need to remind myself that there are people watching, and that when the song comes on I shouldn't break out singing, because nobody wants that. That is not why people are here. And yes, I'm going to avoid that. But yeah, strange song popped on, or not strange song, but a very singable song from my youth. When I was a young man, this song used to be sung by all the kids. There's nostril. Yes. I want something else happening in the nose, and I'm not quite sure as to what, but there needs to be something sort of defining it in a different manner. Is that it? That might be it. That might have been it. Just sort of separating that value. Now, you really don't want to hear me break out into song, Nicole. Maybe if you subscribe to a Patreon at like £1,000 a month, I will would like sing you lullabies to go to bed or something. But yeah, beyond that, I think that is something I will not be doing. Yet. I never say never. I doubt it. Now I need to push this eye up a little bit to make the so at the moment it's just my liked songs on Spotify, just on shuffle, and it is currently playing Cupid's Chokehold by Gym Class Heroes, which is a song from when I was about 13 years old. This song came out. So it's now, I think, 2006. So it's 16 years old now. But we've had quite the selection this evening. Before that, it was let's have a look. We've had a bit of Black Flag, Square Pusher, Pale Saints, Black Eyed Peas, like early Black Eyed Peas, from the album Beyond the Front. which is like a very, very good, chilled, relaxed album. And it's just gone on to a band called Fox Capture Plan with a song called Bridge One. There you go. There is an insight to some of the music that I've been listening to whilst painting this painting today. Let's try and get this engagement of the finger because it's not flat as I've got it. No, yeah, that song was very. I can't help but feel that Gym Class Heroes sort of had that album, and then that's sort of the only album I really recognize or sort of remember them releasing. Because yeah, I definitely don't sort of remember them popping up other than that album. That sounds very cool. Very, very cool, Alex, seeing them live. Yeah, I have a feeling that Katy Perry was in the video for that, the music video for that song. And I feel like it was before, because she used to be a singer for like a session singer or something before she was Katy Perry. And I have a feeling that she was sort of in the rock side of things for some reason. I don't know why I'm thinking that, but yeah, it was definitely strange to see Katy Perry in that music video when we suddenly found out that Katy Perry was this like huge star many years later. It's like, oh, she's in this video. So yeah, prior to I Kissed a Girl. Was that Katy Perry's first big hit then? I Kissed a Girl. Oh, that is a very cold cup of coffee. I know it's going to disappoint Alexander Wilby greatly, but Incubus have just come on, and I have been listening to Incubus all day as well. But I'm not sorry if you ever watch this, Alex. Ooh. Right, definitely getting close to calling this finished. I do at some point though need to engage with the lips. Generally when it comes to lips, obviously they are notoriously difficult within sort of painting portraiture. The main things that I sort of am concerned about whilst engaging with painting lips is to sort of make sure that I'm following following a certain set of criteria that I sort of know apply to lips quite commonly. So that being said, I'm going to be looking at or paying very, very close attention to the shadow in which the lips meet in the middle, and sort of trying to place that. I'm also sort of really going to be paying attention to where the corners of the mouth are. Now, if I can get the painting to sort of this sort of stage where everything is sort of in situ to begin with now. The idea is that hopefully you can just have enough information around the painting or around the lips to help you place them quite easily. So I'm not sort of too worried about painting them or being able to paint them, but I do want to make sure that I sort of have things resolved around it. So yeah, I'm giving myself the strongest sort of platform to make those difficult decisions of painting the lips. So the lips are also open, which means there is a tiny bit of teeth. Tip of the tongue, teeth in the lips. Yes, tiny bit of teeth to be dealing with, which I might just not deal with. I might just sort of pretend that it's not there. We'll see if I can get away with it, because I don't feel like this painting particularly needs teeth. And especially when I'm describing things with a limited palette, I do think it would be potentially confusing amounts of information. But yeah, we will cross that bridge once we get to it. Yeah. Something like that. I do want to cool this side down further because it's in shadow. And then, as mentioned earlier, pay dividends to the corners. Get those corners in. Draw the top lip in and the shadow shape for inside the mouth. And then the bottom lip, which is sticking out. Now, the bottom lip is also very, very pink. So let's try and get that very, very pink as well. Comes down. I have to redraw that shadow shape underneath. Something like that. And then as this shadow shape comes in, it describes where the roundness of the lips, but also where the light stops hitting. And let's tidy that up. I wonder if I'm gonna get away with not adding any extra white. I doubt it. I think I need just a smidgen. Let's go back into sort of the shadowy colour. And describe the... Ooh, that's a bad mark. Don't like that. Wasn't expecting that. I don't like see if I can bring that warmer and lighter. I think I don't like it because it's too dark. Now, let's bring that shadow shape. No, I'm giving up. I'm putting more white on my palette. Yes, the teeny tiny amount of teeny tiny amount of paint to help me navigate these lips. Right. This whole section is in shadow. It's also a bit higher. So let's bring that up. And let's clean that up and make it match the other side. Now, I definitely want to soften just with a clean-ish brush. Just take away that harsh edge of paint for the lips. Otherwise, it looks like it's got they've got lip liner on. Re-engage with the Filtrum highlight there. And again, I think if I bring that up and bring this across. Now, let's deal with this section of shadow and then cut back in underneath to redraw that lip shape from the blur. Right, and let's also, whilst I'm here, that's this shadow shape underneath the cheek, that on the chin for the lip. Bring that down. And now that that's in, let's give this reflected light another pass to bring that up. That's way too light. It's now too close. Just a tiny bit. Like that. Yeah, like that. I think that's working to an extent, but I need to continue that around a little bit, like there, like that, and then like that. Now that definitely transitions into that shadow a bit more, so let's give that more of a gradient. Oh, Marina, you have to paint with oils. You have to give it a go at least at some point. Um, it is very fun because it is just so fun to push it around. Um, and this chin is a little bit busy, so I just need to simplify it just a tad. Separate this finger shadow from the shadow of the underneath the lip. Something like that. Make that less high in its value, and then we can bring back a shadow shape for about there. Okay, right. This painting definitely doesn't look like I intended it to, but doesn't look awful, which is something. So, but as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm definitely less comfortable with this palette than I am the ultramarine palette. So it sort of makes a lot of sense to me that I'm less confident or less comfortable with this palette. But yeah, again, part of that is why I'm sort of trying to re-engage with things like this. Also see how I do handle painting scenarios which I'm not as comfortable with. Let's bring in this. Yeah, I definitely agree that sort of there is something about not knowing how the palette will react that just sort of makes you throw a bit of caution to the wind in order to try and figure things out. I think I just need different temperature in the neck there. Oh no, yeah, definitely. Sort of, it does really allow you to explore the possibilities of a color. Sort of working through these, navigating these spaces. But let me engage with this shadow a bit more and just try and give some texture to this shirt. Some texture. Obviously, it helps to mutter things to yourself when you're painting. Texture. Fuzz. That's the secret. That's the secret sauce that artists aren't giving you. Is that you actually need to mutter to your paint what you want it to do, and then it just does it magically. No, yeah, cobalt teal. Cobalt teal is a really lovely color. Um, I my own palette that I sort of use. So we've got, and we put the brush down so I don't stab my painting with it. So here we have the cobalt teal against the phthalocylene turquoise that is in my palette. Now I use the phthalocylene turquoise in my palette with these colors, so Indian yellow, permanent orange, and intense pink by Charvan, or Charvin. I definitely think that like a cobalt teal and a permanent orange would be a really fun palette to try. I know that I'm pretty sure that both Alexi and Neil have some cobalt teal. So maybe they will also engage with trying that palette. The only reason that I wouldn't suggest that as a palette right now is that from my understanding, sort of if I remember correctly, when I brought the cobalt teal, it's a little bit spenny. So it'd be nice to sort of do some paintings first, or at least give people a bit more notice to pick that up. But then also, like, I barely used cobalt teal because I sort of use phthalocylene turquoise sort of more. So I have too much sitting around to sort of justify spend. What am I saying? Yes, I don't want to sort of force anyone to go out and buy really expensive paint to sort of participate in the challenge. But yeah, I think we've got, instead of next week's, or the palette next week, which was meant to be Alizarin Crimson Viridian, Ultramarine, and something burnt sienna. Sorry, painting, thinking, two different parts of my brain. I think I'm just going to do it in my palette to sort of paint, but I think I'm going to do a still life prompt. It depends if the still life object which I have brought, which I'm currently waiting on, comes in time for me to set up a still life, take some photos, and then sort of get that ready for next week. But yeah, I think that would be very fun, and sort of stops it from being just palettes, because although I am very interested in sort of getting people to do palettes, I'm also sort of wanting to do other things with people as well and sort of see what work gets produced. Yeah, I just have I definitely have a feeling that it was one of the more sort of like more expensive paints that I brought. I was like, it's like, oh, I'll justify this somehow, because like I'll use it as an experiment or something. But yeah, I ended up buying it. I bought it at the same time as I got so like I got the phthalocylene turquoise, the phthalo green lake, I got a Caribbean turquoise from Michael Harding, and something else I think, and the cobalt teal. And yeah, I've barely touched any of them because yeah, I've only really touched the phthalocylene turquoise. The other tubes are sort of pretty much fresh because $20, 20 USD for 37. That's not too bad. I definitely have more expensive paints that I want people to try, but it depends on how effective people use them, sort of how effective people find them. That's the thing. I think you can justify spending that much, sort of like 20 quid on a tube of paint if you're using it sort of quite a lot. But sort of if it's just the one off, or you don't even know if you're going to like it, I think that might be a little much to ask at the moment. But yeah, maybe I'll give away some paint at some point. I don't know. Depends on how successful things are. Let's. Am I done with this? Is this a bird? I think I'm done with this. Like he says, pulling a big streak of paint through the face. Yeah, I think that's it. How are we feeling? I say this, I know that it takes like a minute for the delay of me asking it to when it gets streamed, but yeah, how are we feeling about the painting? I'm sort of quite. There are things that I will sort of could potentially just knock back, maybe because they're not working quite as intended. But no, yeah, for the sake of exploring or experimenting with this palette, I'm pretty pleased with this. So yeah, with that all being said, I sort of now leave it to you to go and paint a painting in Virdian and Alizarin Crimson plus white. It can be any material that you like: paint, oil paint, acrylic, gouache, watercolor, egg tempera if that's your bag, pencil, sort of anything that you fancy. And yeah, sort of I'll if you post the painting on Instagram and tag me in it, I will choose a winner and give away this painting. Same as last week, I will as mentioned, I will be choosing the winner for the burnt sienna and ultramarine painting tomorrow at 6 p.m. So if you still want to enter that for the chance to win a painting done in that palette, please do participate. The candy palette, there is something very, very sweet about the palette. It's minty and strawberry minty sort of feel. But yeah, I thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to chat to you all, as always. I'm going to take this upstairs, get a photo of it, and sort of mention about the challenge, this week's challenge, to sort of get into for this painting. So I will see you over on Instagram. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for hanging out with me and painting, and I'll see you next